Constructive force will always prevail. And
Or everything's already written in the book of life. So whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
the only question is whether we are moved along with it, or left trapped in the losing side of the match.
I submit to you that such alterations, the creation or selection of such so called alternative presence, is continually taking place. The very fact that we can conceptually deal with this notion, that is, entertain it as an idea, is a first step in discerning such processes themselves.
He gave some very simple examples of how these shifts might show up in everyday life. You might reach for a light switch in your bathroom and suddenly realize it has always been in a different spot. Or you might go to adjust the air vent in your car, only to find there was never one there at all. These are reflexes left over from another version of the present.
That literally never happened to me. I'm trying to think of a time that has happened to me that literally never has happened to me.
Habits from a timeline that no longer exists, but which still linger in your memory at a subconscious level. Sometimes we even dream of people or places we've never seen, yet they feel familiar and vivid, as if we really had known them. Most of the time, we dismiss it and move on. But one of the strongest impressions many people experience is deja vu, that strange, undeniable feeling that
I've experienced deja vu probably over 20 times. Like, this is one I have experienced. Like, I've already been here, already done this. I, I've experienced deja vu a lot. If you experience deja vu, drop it in the comments below.
we are reliving the present moment exactly as it happened before. We hear the same words, we say the same words, and we are sure we've been here before. Dick argued this wasn't just a trick of the mind. For him, deja vu was evidence. He believed it was a clue that at some point in the past, a variable had been changed, as if reality was reprogrammed, and that a new timeline branched off from the old one. In other words, we are not just imagining it, we are literally reliving the same segment of time again, only in a slightly altered version of reality.
A breaching, a tinkering, a change had been made, but not in our present, had been made in our past. Evidently, such an alteration would have a peculiar effect on those persons involved. They would, so to speak, be moved back one square or several squares on the board game which constitutes our reality. Conceivably, this could happen any number of times, affecting any number of people, as alternative variables were reprogrammed. We would have to live out each reprogramming along the subsequent linear time axis, but to the programmer, whom we call God, to him the results of the programming would be apparent at once. We are within time, and he is not. We are living in a computer programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs.
Discuss it openly.
Either it's either 1,000 years or 1,000 days on earth is one day in heaven. So it just makes you think what's really going on up there. Because if you had to ask me what is time, it is literally the sun and moon in rotation on top of us. So heaven is above that. So time moves a lot different. That's relativity, if you ask me. Activate submersible. We gotta find this chronovisor, man. Since we're deep on these waters. Chronovisor.
Chronovisor is a conspiracy that involves the Vatican. This man, who's a monk in Italy named Pellegrino Ernetti, and he had this skill set of restoring old Gregorian chants. And he was working with this other guy who was his boss. And then the guy who he was working with, the guy heard his father's voice. And he's like, that sounds like my dad, this frequency that was coming in. He heard his father talking about shining shoes or a shoe repair or something. He's like, that is my father, because he was a cobbler. They're able to like tap into this whole past life. And so that got Father Pellegrino to start doing research into what he called residual energy. He theorized that that could be detected. He went back, fragments had remained, and no one knew what the play was. He went back and was able to watch the whole play and write down the entire play.
That is nuts,
And so
dude.
they went to the Pope with it, and the Pope said, you have to get rid of it. He said, this is way too dangerous to have. Supposedly, they dismantled it, but there's a lot of people theorizing that the Vatican still has it, they still use it, and potentially the CIA is involved in it.
I wonder what the chronovisor looks like.
Actually, what happens when you go back and you try to change the past, you're in the original event. So the paradox actually is the paradox of retrocausation. Let me use an example. When in 1972, I was sent by Dr. Sterling Colgate and my father from a time lab in East Hanover, New Jersey. The building's still there. It's the brick daycare center at a Presbyterian church on School Road in East Hanover, New Jersey. That was a time lab in the early 70s. I was sent there via a technology called plasma confinement to the day that Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address, which was November 19th of 1863. And I was photographed by a photographer that I think was Matthew Brady. It's disputed. Some people believe it was a photographer assistant of Brady named Bacharach. But it looked like Matthew Brady because I saw him as he was taking the photograph of the citizens of Gettysburg gathering to see President Lincoln give a speech, which was the caption of that famous photograph that I'm in from Gettysburg of that day. But let me just explain how I was using this as an example of how the quantum paradox actually works.
Sure.
Now, if you ponder the fact that I was sent there, photographed in 1863, and then after its discovery in 1951, this photograph has been widely published in news magazines because until 2007, it was the sole surviving photograph of Lincoln at Gettysburg. That begs the question of, did I not exist in the photograph until 1972?
Mm-hmm.
Jump there, get photographed, and create another timeline that I return to where suddenly my image was in all the news magazines that republished the Josephine Cobb image of Lincoln at Gettysburg? Or was I always in all of those photographs? And the latter is the case. Why? This is the paradox of retrocausation. From the perspective of 1863, I arrived as a time traveler from the future, was photographed, and hence my image was always in the photograph. So from the perspective of 1972, I had to go to 1863 to be in the photograph. But if I had flipped through, let's say, that September 1963 edition of the National Geographic that republished the Josephine Cobb image of Lincoln at Gettysburg, I would have seen myself in that image. That is to say that the past is immutable in the sense that when you go back in time to change it, the sine qua non of time travel is that you're in the past event, the original event. So I challenge the notion of Schrodinger's cat and the notion of a second timeline breaking off, because when you go back to that past event, you're in the original event. The notion of a second timeline branching off, I think, is a form of magical thinking. But I would distinguish that concept from the idea of being sent to a different timeline. For example, we found that the chronovisors were unreliable as an intelligence gathering device, an intelligence gathering time machine, because every time they sent us to quote unquote the same past event, it was always a slightly different version of that same past event.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so for example, when I would pop into view in front of Ford's Theater and try to talk myself past the ticket table in the front of the lobby, right inside the door, as a society child dressed in my Sunday best, and try to convince them that my parents had already been admitted with my ticket and were sitting inside, the person who would greet me at the ticket table was always a different person. It was like a man and his son. Then it was the man by himself on the second jump. On the third jump, let's say it was just his son. Then it was his son and his brother.
So is that you, in effect, creating a small paradox?
Well, I don't think we should think of the disparate timelines as paradoxical per se. I think we should think instead of the fact
Yes, but you've got
the
change.
multiverse,
You've got
Well,
change.
according to one estimate, the multiverse contains as many timelines as would be expressed numerically by a number at 12-point type that would stretch for 130 million miles.
Now, I remember we covered Project Looking Glass and how that may play a role in them trying to create history if this technology existed.
At the peak of the Cold War, the CIA uncovered a source who claimed to have found an ancient Babylonian artifact capable of generating temporal portals with the ability to see through time. After recovering the crystalline artifact from the Baghdad Museum raid, Project Looking Glass shifted to Phase 2, construction of a temporal aperture device. The Nevada desert was chosen as the home for the device. Under the guise of nuclear weapons testing, we were able to construct the aperture in complete secrecy. 200,000 tons of structural steel were used, along with 212,000 cubic yards of concrete. The crystalline artifact was stabilized with argon gas. Operators were specially trained psych operatives who were given a combination of psychedelic and emotion-suppressive drugs. This was a necessary component in order to activate and operate the device and focus on specific time periods, past or future. December 12, 1979, first test activation. 3 operators exposed to unfiltered timeline data disappeared upon activation. All clinical staff experienced temporal displacement, with some reporting crossing their own timelines. The project was immediately suspended. The device showed us things, probabilities, warnings. In 2012, it revealed something that forced total shutdown. This footage is all that remains.
Thank you. Do they have the same type of device that Project Looking Glass was on 13 Ghosts?
All right, so I've been meaning to make a video for this for a long time. This is an alien wrapped up in a thermal blanket. The person who found them and who went through this experience, his name was Jonathan Reed. You guys probably have heard of him. It's a very old story. He's got an alien wrapped up in a bag. He opens it, and you can see the full body of it. You can see the head. You can see the eyes that blink. You'll see that in just a second once he uncovers the head. So it is still alive. But the story is that he was hiking in the Seattle Cascade area, and he's walking. His dog starts freaking out, so you can see it blinking there. His dog starts freaking out. The dog runs towards something that he can't see yet, and then all of a sudden he notices this figure, and he sees it attack his dog. It actually killed the dog. It ripped its throat out. And after attacking the dog, that's when Jonathan Reed grabbed a giant log and hit this alien being over the head. The consensus from him was that the alien had crashed, and it was just kind of in a hyperactive state of like, what's going on here? He captured the triangle UFO that he thinks dropped off the alien, or maybe it was his cohorts coming back and checking on him, but this is him laying outside. This is after he hit him in the head with a stick. He thinks it's dead at this moment. So there's the black triangle. There's a little bit better pictures of it coming up. But basically, he hits it over the head. He brings it back to his house, wraps it in a thermal blanket, and he puts it in a freezer, like those big, like a meat freezer, just to keep it fresh and figure it out. See, these are more photos of the UFO. But anyway, he starts hearing scratching. Oh, sorry if that's a little vulgar. Viewer discretion is advised. But there's scratching on the freezer, and he takes it out, and it turns out it's still alive. All right, so I've been meaning to make a video for this for a long time.
Your thoughts in the comments below. What is going on here? All right, you know what time it is. If you thought I didn't have another excellent specimen for you today, think again.
This mineral here is barite I. We'll cover this one next. So hi. In England here it's spelt with Y, but Americans spell it using I. As you can see, this piece is blue, but they come in other colours too. Yellow, grey or red you'll see, contingent on impurities. It's found in sedimentary, so let's unpack its properties. It streaks white, Mohs hardness 3, specific gravity is 4.3. Luster often seems pearly, but glass-like it is primarily. Cleavage perfect, fracture odd, barium and sulphur were the tools of God. Now we've given this a nod, on to the next crystal I'll plod.
Yes, this is the specimen of the day you heard, but if I had to name this specimen, I would call it Glass Bird. Please don't cause a fit. What would you name it? That's all we have for today's video. If you made it this far, the code word is quantum. Go ahead and drop